The story of the Jefferson Historical Society's Judd Hall begins in the autumn of 1865. Working Lodge 554, the Masonic Lodge in Jefferson, had been meeting in the assembly room upstairs in the Heartbreak, which was then called the Jefferson House, ever since their first meeting, which was held on July 7, 1864. In the autumn of 1865, a committee was appointed to build a lodge hall for the group. Construction took place that autumn and early winter, and the lodge held its first meeting in their new home on January 25, 1866. The hall was not only the home of the lodge for the next 151 years, it was also the meeting place for at least 4 other organizations, in addition to being the venue for receptions, dinners and banquets, ice cream socials, rummage sales, and a place for students to spend their after-school hours. In 1992 to 1996, Jefferson Town Court was located in the hall, and for a while, a local Baptist congregation held their services upstairs in the lodge room.
When the Historical Society took over the Judd Hall, or at that time the Masonic Hall, there was a lot of damage in the building that needed to be restored. There had been roof leakage for many years, so there's damaged ceilings and walls throughout the building. We needed to work on repairing that. Going through the building, within the basement, there was a lot of work that had to be done, cleaning out old rotten materials from the area where the dirt floor had just left everything to deteriorate. And the first floor was not very secure or very stable. So we put concrete piers on the floor of the basement and put wooden support posts throughout the basement to support the first floor in a better manner. Also within the basement, since the floor was dirt, we covered the floor with plastic sheeting to try to isolate the moisture and put spray foam insulation on the walls throughout to try to tighten the building up and make it a little more fuel efficient. Moving up onto the first floor, in the main room where most of the activities are, we taped the ceiling and painted it and painted all the walls, repaired damage around, just general damage in that main room. Within the kitchen there was massive water damage, so we removed all the area behind the sink and above the sink and replaced that wall and repainted the kitchen, ceilings, walls, and a volunteer sanded the kitchen's hardwood floors down and stained and refinished them. On the outside of the building, there was a lot of damage on some of the siding, some missing panels of siding. We replaced that missing siding. On one wall, it was covered with vinyl siding, and there was also vinyl siding under the porch. That siding was all removed, so the exterior was repaired and painted top to bottom. Behind the building, we had installed a septic tank, and some local workers graded and smoothed off all the lawn area, reseeded, and have restored the backyard at this point. Current guidelines didn't allow us to maintain the former wooden fire escape without railings and very deteriorated condition. That was all removed, and there will be a metal fire escape fabricated and installed probably this fall. The footings have been installed, and that's pretty much ready for that work to be done. The work in general on the building has been done by crews of Jefferson Historical Society volunteers, and we've also hired professional contractors to do quite a bit of work as well. And most of those contractors have been local folks. In the second floor of Judd Hall, we've done a lot of work. Eric Parker, a Boy Scout, was working on his Eagle Scout project, and he took that project on to gather a crew of workers and to do essentially the entire gutting of the upstairs. He removed the paneling on the walls, and below that the plaster and lath, and removed the ceiling material in preparation for us to do the development of the area. Once that was all done, we applied spray foam insulation to the walls to insulate the building thoroughly, and then put sheetrock back on the walls, taped it, and got it painted. We've added heat and air conditioning units and done some rewiring of the area and replaced the very heavily damaged window and the doorway that'll lead out to the new fire escape. In the future, we'll be putting in a pressed tin simulated antique ceiling and a drop ceiling, and putting in track lighting for the museum, and sanding the old plank floors, which are rough cut, and sealing, polyurethaning those for the floor. We've had a wide variety of uses for the Judd Hall building already, even though it's not thoroughly finished in the renovation work. But we worked very closely with an art teacher from Jefferson High School who coordinated an open mic series once a month for many months in a row. And that was an event that brought community members into the building, and people who wouldn't necessarily have come to an activity of the Historical Society otherwise. We've had research talks by Jesse Ravage, who did a thorough investigation of the history of the town, how it developed, why it developed in a manner that it did, and the direction that it did. We've had 2 meetings of local historians and historical societies talking about common problems. How do you raise money? How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do a newsletter? And we've also so we're working collaboratively with each other. Another activity we had last summer was a bird festival. The bird festival included bird walks and a birding breakfast at Buck Hill Farms, but we came back to the Masonic Hall to see a presentation by Andy Mason about birding around Jefferson, and an photo art show of Barb Palmer's bird photos. We had a meeting with local businesses where the businesses gathered and discussed with each other how, by having the different businesses working together and Historical Society working together collaboratively, we may be able to help out businesses as a whole in the community. We had pumpkin carving events for the last couple of years, and folks could come in, we'd give them a pumpkin, patterns for fancy pumpkin carving, and they could work with their kids or grandkids on carving pumpkins, which we put out on, they could either take home or we put out on the porch on Halloween for display for people to see. And in 2019, we had a dedication ceremony for the building, recognizing it in the memory of Colonel Stephen Judd, who was an early pioneer in the area. He settled in Harpersfield, then moved to Jefferson, built the first framed house within Jefferson, and he was responsible for Jefferson becoming named Jefferson. He donated the land for the town green and the land for the academy and the old Jefferson Cemetery. At the dedication ceremony, we had presentations by several historians, and we unveiled 2 plaques in the building. One recognizing the history of the building, including the role of the Masons, and the other identifying the building as Colonel Stephen Judd Hall in recognition of Stephen Judd's contributions to the town. The fundraising that had to be done for this project overall was to raise money to purchase the building from the Masons. And we'd like to thank the donors to that effort who came together very quickly to make it possible. Funding has also been important for the restoration work in the building, those expenses. The most important source of funding overall has been the Nicholas J. Jurried Family Foundation. Nick Jurried was a resident of Gilboa and has been a very strong supporter of historical societies around the Schoharie County area, as well as many other causes in his current home in the Austin, Texas area. As far as the vision of our use for the Judd Hall building, we envision the first floor being used primarily for community events, speakers, and a variety of different sorts of activities. The second floor is destined to be a museum, which we're working on planning for now. And it'll be the Nicholas J. Jurried Museum of Jefferson History. That will cover the settlement of Jefferson, information about the schools, agriculture, geology, the historic use of the building by the Masons. It'll be a photo-rich display of Jefferson history. In a small room to the side, we'll have an archive room which will be a place where we can house our photographs, scrapbooks, old newspapers, maps, items related to the history of Jefferson. Overall, our goal is to be able to document and preserve Jefferson's history and to educate the public on this history.